Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mindful Movement. This is our podcast with Envision Fitness, Caine and Andy speaking.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well.
This podcast is basically going to be a breakdown of our lives on how fitness has helped us become the people we are today. And we're going to debunk fitness myths because there's a lot of saturated information out there, especially when it comes to online, about what's good and what's bad. And we basically want to break it down to explain which is good and which is bad.
Mm.
But so for today, we're going to start off with Caine and a bit about his backstory of how the past him grew into the person he is today through fitness. So, first and foremost, thank you, Caine, for coming today.
Mate, it's my pleasure as always. Likewise.
The questions that I really want to ask you today is just basically diving in deep into your past on how you become where you was then to where you are now, and how fitness really helped you become the man you are today. And why fitness? Why not any other stream? Why did you go to fitness?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to delving thoroughly into this podcast and just delving into my past because obviously a lot of people know who I am as an individual in the sense of like the characteristics I convey. However, what a lot of people don't know is like the why, like why am I how I am and what has ultimately led me to being who I am based on, what's occurred in my life and, why have I made the choices that I made to inevitably lead up to this moment.
So obviously, I know your past.
Yeah, of course.
Some people will know your past who are watching this now.
It'll be vastly limited, let's say. I'm not, well, I'm an open individual, but I just don't necessarily see the need to open up when there's no, you know what I mean? Like when there's no context to it, you know what I mean? But obviously, because obviously, given the circumstances, this seems like a prime opportunity for me to open up because there's a purpose to justify it. Whereas, obviously, if someone genuinely inquired about it, then I'd be open and transparent about it. But because obviously that's not been the case, and I've never seen a need to do it.
And I would say that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast. It's because there'll be people who are in our positions from who we was before to where we are now, and we can help them not only just in a fitness way, but also in a life way.
Yeah, as you,
You
as
know,
you as you know, ultimately, like I've always endeavored to enhance the well-being and perception, both physically and mentally, of every individual by comparing expectation versus reality, or in other words, what social media conveys versus real life, and what is realistic and what's sustainable. Because obviously, people individuals will perceive other individuals' physiques on social media as like X, Y, Z. However, like ultimately the question boils down to, is it realistic and is it sustainable? Hypothetically, no, because obviously there's a lack of transparency behind it, and obviously they don't understand like the marketing or the financial schemes behind it for them to ultimately earn a living. So for me, quite frankly, it's pretty much just normalizing what's realistic and what's sustainable.
Mm. I completely agree, Kane. And with the first question that I have is from the person you was before, how has fitness made you to who you are now?
Years ago, some people from whether it's like pure gym, the gym group, school, college, knew me to be quite socially inept or socially awkward. So, for instance, I still recall this memory from year seven where it was break time, and obviously there was like an outdoor area for like all these benches and trees and like stuff like that, and I was just sat there like sort of just in my own space, and I'll use the term isolated, but I just I'd be looking around everywhere, and everyone would be with people, and then there was just me, and I'd just all be alone. And that day, I recall a number of people contacting me, like who were obviously I shouldn't stereotype this, but who were relatively high on the social spectrum. But they were just like saying, don't speak, always here, and pretty much just being there for me. Just even though they didn't know me, but it's just what how they viewed me at the time, and that's something that will always keep with me. But obviously, there were other occasions where if I was with my family and we went to like a fast food chain, for some reason, I would always sit on my own. And quite frankly, like it's difficult to explain it now as to why, but I hypothetically just preferably enjoyed my own company in my own space. And even like when I was at home, ultimately I would just prefer just being in my own space. Obviously individuals who go out drinking and clubbing, etc., etc. I mean, nothing against it, but personally, it's just not my cup of tea, just based on my upbringing and my childhood. But where it leads into how the gym has made me who I am, you know, I would say ultimately that boils down to my old man, my dad. Obviously, when I was about 15, I used the gym in my secondary school to train, but obviously, bearing in mind, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. I was just taking taking a gander on all the machines. But I think I remember this memory where I was with a couple of mates, and I think there was this one bloke who I'm kind of in contact with actually, who was quite strong on the leg press, and I remember taking a gander on it, and I was pretty strong myself for a 15-year-old, but I don't remember exactly what I was lifting. But anyway, when I turned 16, that was when my dad was like to me, right, Caine, I'm going to get you into the gym. I'm going to train with you side by side, father like son. And as soon as I turned 16, I got a membership at Pure Gym. And bearing in mind, I was still this individual who was like socially awkward or socially inept. And I merely struggled to communicate with people. I would be quite shy. I'd hide in a bit of a shell, and I just wouldn't feel comfortable. Like when it came to conversations or stuff like that, I would allow my dad to take the lead on that, and I just would kind of just be stood there like an NPC. You could say. Oh. Yeah, so from there, obviously, my dad and I, especially when I was during college, my dad, bless him, would always be flexible. So, like, if I was finished college at like lunch or something, or if I had a free period and I had some hours for another lesson, obviously, I'd say to my dad, like, can we go to the gym? And you know, we were inseparable. Our bond grew astronomically as training passed by, and obviously as a lot of individuals would do, I pretty much, well, stereotype people as those that would judge because I wasn't slim, or I wasn't, I wasn't underweight or I wasn't overweight, but I was just, you know what I mean? I just didn't have that muscular or that vascular build. But I would contemplate as if my mind was in theirs, and I would hypothesize that, you know, I'm going to be judged based on my appearance, my technique execution, etc., etc. However, obviously, as time passed by, this is where things started to change. So, because I ultimately recognized progress in myself, both physically and mentally. So, for instance, I still actually have this video clip on my camera roll where I was wearing like some like tracky bottoms and like this t-shirt or something, and I just didn't feel comfortable like wearing shorts or wearing like short sleeve tops or anything like that. And I remember this actually. I think it took me about 4 years to wear a pair of shorts or something. So I would genuinely like wear long sleeved outfits, whether it's like joggers or like, as some people know, the iconic compression shirts during college, that era. Yeah, so I just wear long sleeve stuff. But then I remember there was one point in my lifting career or my fitness career where I was like, right, you know, like let's just do it. Let's wear a t-shirt, or let's wear a pair of shorts. I know it doesn't reveal that much skin, but because you're so enclosed within yourself and you're thinking X, Y, Z, you didn't feel comfortable within your own appearance. And ultimately, because my confidence grew through, not only through physical and mental progress, but it was when I commenced communicating to members, and that generated a different perspective for me, knowing that they weren't what I perceived them as initially. And ultimately I learned that, as with every other individual, they are in the gym merely to emphasize on their own well-being. And when I go on about how I ultimately want to enhance individuals' perception on health, fitness, nutrition, wellness, I've been down that path. So because of that, because I have experienced that ever since I was about 15, 16 years old, that's now converted, and now that's ultimately what I envision to do when it comes to a lot of people.
Mm. A lot of people struggle. I think everyone struggles from gym anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
To dive in a bit deeper on how you became from not wearing wanting to wear shorts in the gym to then wearing shorts in the gym, what was it that shifted your mind frame to say, you know what, I'm going to do it?
I think, well, in the health and fitness industry, because the the trends and the shift patterns go very quickly, I would kind of be judged based on my appearance when it comes to my sort of fashion style. Bearing in mind, I don't by no means I have the best fashion. However, I've always endeavored, especially during the last couple of years, to look as presentable as possible. And, I've ultimately placed a lot of emphasis on my own well-being. So, for instance, obviously, this is like genuine deep territory now. So, in school, so we're going to pretty much we're going to rewind it a tad bit, go back to school in the sense of like how I acted and why I did what I did, and then go from there. But in school, I remember that like I genuinely didn't take an interest in my well-being, not for the sake of me not wanting to. It was more or less because I wasn't, I didn't realize. I didn't realize. So there would be instances where, you know, I wouldn't get my hair cut on a frequent basis. Could be even stuff like personal hygiene, or even, like greasy hair. Could be stuff like even dental hygiene. It could be stuff like just, skincare as well, amongst other things. So variables like that I never took into account, and I didn't feel good within myself because when I looked at myself, or especially when back then when I got bullied severely, I just wasn't fond of myself, both from a physical point of view and a mental point of view. But as we rewind to the gym, so because I didn't feel comfortable about, my appearance, that is ultimately why I wore the long sleeve tops or the joggers or whatever, because it was merely acting as a mask for me to hide behind to not show me. But as time progressed, obviously, this is where, you know, I decided to invest myself more by, emphasizing my dental hygiene, emphasizing on my personal hygiene, emphasizing on my fashion style, and pretty much just looking after myself, taking care of myself, and even stuff like, even being financially accountable, which I've always been, but just factors like that I've learned over time because of how, again, just how socially inept or awkward I used to be back in the day. And as time's progressed through there, that's just merely and inevitably led to me just being as confident as I am nowadays.
So to delve in, what was it that shifted the mind frame to be like, I'm not in a bad mental place now where I can accept who I am? Like, what was that?
I would say ultimately it boils down to the actual gym environment and being surrounded by the members who uplifted you spiritually, and not only that, but saw potential in you as an individual, in the sense of what you could be capable of, or they could foresee the inevitable, which, they were correct. They were correct. But in addition to that, I would say, um, it was more or less self awareness too. Obviously, given, you know, events that have occurred in my past, obviously, those are factors to consider when it's come to why I was like that. However, because obviously of my self awareness and being aware of, you know, pretty much basic human necessities, you could say, that's what kind of shifted my mindset to those trends and patterns to ensure that, you know, I'm actually investing in myself and I don't get perceived as X, Y, Z, not for the sake of them, but for me. Because ultimately I am the priority. And that's something that I'm still learning currently. I am the priority, no one else is, because in my life I've always been too selfless or too compassionate, and I've always, been mindful of what people say and what they do, and I've always placed emphasis on their well-beings and even sometimes over mine. And sometimes I just didn't realize it up until you experience things, because ultimately you can't buy experience, and you have to experience things to reflect and learn from them.
A quotation that I love is, "In order to have peace, you must face chaos."
And I'd say that it's relatable. It's relatable. I mean, as you know, and as many people know, obviously, a lot of events have transpired this year, which, ultimately I was at my lowest point mentally ever. And, it's concerning for my family, especially, obviously, people that were closest around me as well. And, even so, I was, thankfully, I had obviously some people close to me that did uplift me spiritually, but for the vast majority of the time, again, I was alone. So it was like you just said there with the quote: in order to have peace, you have to have chaos. And it's right.
Well, how can a man grow without trauma? And it's like one of the main things was, at 21 years old, you was the assistant manager of the UK's number one gym.
Mm.
21 years old.
21. Yeah. So I joined Pure Gym in 2021 of December, and I was 19, and then I become AGM in 2022. So yeah, about 21 years old. I was AGM.
The fact you've gone from where you was in school as an introvert, didn't talk to anybody, went on meals with your family and chose to sit by yourself, to now being who you are now, to being like, you talk to anybody
Yeah,
with
yeah.
actual sense of meaning with everything you say, and you have to say it with pure intent to help them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, how does an individual get from that to that?
It's a very, very big question, and it broadens the spectrum. So when it comes to stuff like that, I like a quote that I have learned is that you have to go through pain, or you have to suffer to learn, and especially the hard way. But for me, given the the line of events that occurred in my life, ultimately it boils down to choices. And the choices you make, good, bad, whether it's morally correct, morally incorrect, those choices impose consequences. And again, good, bad, doesn't matter. The point being is, when you make a choice, you have to reflect on that choice and think, how does it benefit me? And what are the pros and what are the cons, and which outweighs which? And for me, as years passed by, I was always compelled and consumed by relatively low self esteem, relatively low self image, obviously, as you know. And it was like a spark that was ignited in me where I was thinking, I have the potential, but this ultimately is about me. It's not to prove anyone wrong, it's to prove that I'm right. And this is ultimately about me and me alone. But from those choices, obviously, a lot has occurred. But I think not only emotionally, but mentally, it makes you see things from a different perspective, in the sense of, I'm 22 years old, and, by no means am I intelligent, or I don't want to say mature, but I would say, quite frankly, that I am maturer than the vast majority of individuals my age, bearing in mind of what the line of events that have occurred in my life and the choices that were made given those circumstances.
And that's what I had to come to. I had to come to that this year. Actually, was thinking about that. Not many people have been through what we've been through,
No.
and it's like the fact that we decided to have chosen that choice in the the choices that we made to be where we are now, why do we make them choices?
I would say because I know that I could have gone down somewhat of a similar or the same path as, you know, of other individuals, given like the line of events that have occurred. However, if I did go down that path, that wouldn't benefit me at all. And what I envisioned to achieve wouldn't have been the case. And for me, I know that I am better than that. And for me, like, I know that because of what's transpired, it's ultimately um, built a tolerance over time. So it merely, I just endure it. But like, just say it just comes down to just how just seeing things from a different perspective and just thinking if I make this choice, what are the consequences? If I make this choice, like, is it going to hinder my future? Is it going to hinder my well-being, whether it's physical, mental, psychological, financial, etc., etc.? And I'll just say, choices is just such a, you could just be so indecisive, but you just require that validation to make that choice. Because if you're just being spontaneous about it and you just go down that path, then, you know, you're going to stumble upon even more obstacles because you're not coming to that realization. And for me, I would just say that these choices, I just came to a realization quicker than I initially anticipated otherwise.
I think as well, like with our past experiences, they gave us the right choice because we learned from their mistakes,
Yeah.
and it's like I said earlier, using past trauma makes a man. And it's like maybe the reason why we are who we are today is because they showed us firsthand what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously the quote you mentioned, obviously to have peace, there has to be chaos, and that's applicable. And it's when I said about you have to undergo pain or suffering to learn, and it merely just conveys the consequences visually. It merely illustrates the consequences, and that therefore validates your decision and your choice of what not to do, because otherwise you will have a similar dilemma to obviously those individuals who make those choices, and whether they realize it or don't realize it, but ultimately as long as you do, then in a way you do have to express your gratitude to them.
With fitness, how has it helped change your life?
I think initially it was when I still remember actually this memory where, because of the astronomical amount of progress I was making in the gym, both physically and mentally, I still recall when I would just be training with my dad at Pure Gym and members would just inquire to me, you should be a personal trainer. And I was thinking, oh, be a personal trainer. I was like, who would have thought? And from that moment, I thought, yeah, why not? And since then, obviously, because I had obviously had past tense, but to the present day, like I have always possessed a sheer amount of discipline and an immense passion and unwavering devotion to the gym. And I conducted extensive research about personal training. I looked into courses, but obviously, ultimately, I consulted with my former line manager at the time, and obviously, I made some phone calls, sent some emails round, and pretty much just wanted to accumulate as much information and details as I could about what it takes to be a personal trainer. And when in my former line manager broke down all the information details initially, I thought, you know what? Let's do it. And initially, my parents were skeptical about it, actually, just because I know it seems surprising,
Mm.
only because of the finance behind it. So I paid approximately, I think, £1,700 for my level 2 gym instructor and level 3 personal trainer certification, plus obviously my emergency first aid too. But they didn't know as to whether I would break even slash profit from that because bearing in mind, obviously, nearly £2,000 it is a lot of money, and but for me, quite frankly, because I was always financially accountable, even at the age of like 18, 19 years, you know, I just thought I deem this as an investment, not an investment financially, but an investment in my own well-being. And if because I already knew how passionate and the devotion that I had to the gym, I just thought, you know what? There's nothing that's made me more adamant of what career that I should pursue. And from there, I've never regretted my line of work, and ever since I joined Pure Gym in 2019, no, sorry, 2021. I don't know why I said 2019 for. I think I'm not that old. But yeah, when I joined Pure Gym in 2021, I just thought it didn't even feel like work to me. It felt like a second home, or it just felt like I thought like a safe haven, in other words. And I generally just enjoyed being there, and even like again, even given the line of events that have transpired, it still hasn't knocked me down, or I haven't gone to another line of work. It's like because my mind's so fixated on this, and you can tell now, just like my voice and my body language and everything. You can just tell like how much it means to me.
I completely agree. I can feel it. I see it. I can feel it.
Yeah, you feel the
Great.
energy that I'm just projecting here.
I do want to dive into though when you said about your parents doubted the investment that you thought would be a good investment.
Mm.
Mine was the same, but let's dive in a bit deeper. Why do you think they doubted you?
Mhm. I don't think it was in relation to actually me as an individual, but I would say it was more in the sense of finance. Obviously, bearing in mind, obviously, I couldn't have pursued my career if I didn't possess the necessary qualifications. And I'm not saying it was a risk, but it reflects back to what I said previously if we rewind about choices. So this is a prime example where that's applicable, and it's like, right, I had to break down the pros and the cons of this choice because it wasn't something that I had to tread lightly with. I would say, it was ultimately a big decision. Is this the career path that I desire to go down, or is it not? Because if I'm going to spend near enough £2,000 on these qualifications, I had to ensure that the return investment would be worth it. And the answer to it is it was. Not
Mm.
because of because even though I've always had an immense passion and wavering devotion for business, but what I didn't realize at the time is that the integrations between personal training and business is integrated together. And I think that was that moment where I was thinking, you know what? I'm going into personal training because I studied business in college, and I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur of sorts, but I didn't know exactly what field I wanted to do. I remember where I was thinking, right, I'm going to be wearing these corporate suits. I'm going to be doing some shenanigans like that, and I've just thought, you know what? It's still the same principle in some capacity, but it's more bespoke to my own career path. So, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to my parents, like I don't think, yeah, as I mentioned previously, I don't think they doubted me in the sense that I couldn't do it, but it was more in the sense of, am I going to be earning obviously what like a usual wage or a salary, but even though it's all subjective because obviously because you're self-employed and obviously income can fluctuate as a result of a number of factors, but it's ultimately your business plan slash your business model that inevitably results as to whether your business merely succeeds or fails. But you just have to be prepared for that outcome, and sometimes to be a strategist, you have to find victory in failure. And if you can do that, then that just evidently conveys that you are a strategist.
That was a great way to explain it. That's like a Kane Kirk quote right there.
Exclusivity at its finest.
You know what? The way you explained that then was quite actually unique to what I experienced
Mm.
because your parents are like, right, do you have the right fundamentals in place to make this work in a way? you know.
I'd say so. I think they were just skeptical about money because obviously, I mean, I did YouTube, obviously, but I was one of them kids, but it generally did well. You know, I was legitimately operating a business on YouTube. I was generating revenue through monetization, channel memberships, collaborations and partnerships amongst other YouTubers as well, donations via live streams and external platforms. So I was working, but again, this is where individuals will stereotype saying like YouTube's not a real job. But how I interpret it, if you have to do something to earn money, then that therefore is a job. Whether you're at home or whether you have to travel to a workplace, it does not matter. If you have to take time, free time out of your day to work in an attempt to generate revenue, that is a form of work. And that's what I did before. But then all those were transferable skills, thankfully, because obviously with business, YouTube, my passion and devotion for fitness, plus personal training, it was like, I think it's like it was like a bundle. It was like it all just fitted into one. It's like a package.
Mm. What I noticed is when I first started my first company, which was a landscape company, my mum actually run me. She went, Andy, don't do it. So
No way.
yeah,
Why?
because she was afraid it wouldn't work. So she just didn't believe in that I could do it. In the fact, and she said, be safe. And she wanted me to go into the RAF and fly airplanes.
Wow. No
Because when I was
way.
younger, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly airplanes. But now, where I am now, I can still do that without being a commercial flight
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
you
Of
know.
course.
So what I tried to explain to my mum was basically I can still fly planes. I just don't want to do it for a physical job.
Yeah.
I want to do it for pleasure.
Yeah.
And because of the way she is, she just didn't understand it. And she's just like, Andy, just don't do it. Get a normal job. Be safe. I said to her, I went, I can't because I know I can do it.
Yeah.
And I did do it.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, she's still like, what? And she believes in me now.
Yeah.
Whatever job I have now, which with myself, she just knows I can do it because of that situation. But I think because she's never done it for herself, she reflected on her own past and she said, because she couldn't do it, no one else can. It's
Mm.
too risky. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like I tried to explain to her was, I'm not you.
Yeah.
And I believe that I can do anything I put my mind to. And there was hard times where I was literally in my flat, couldn't afford gas, no food, you know, breathing out, you can see my breath. And my vehicle's broke. I was on a push bike. Got to the point where I was like, damn, this is hard. But
Yeah.
whatever come through, I push through. And I would honestly say fitness is one of the things that really got me there as well. Because when it comes to the gym, it's more you versus you.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times when you're in the gym where you just don't want to be there. You don't want to push yourself. But once you push through it, they're the best type of sessions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the same
Absolutely.
in the business. I didn't want to bike 8 miles for 3 months to a job to get enough money to buy a van. But I said to myself, short time discomfort for long time gain, get it done,
Yeah.
you know.
In a lot of ways, I can relate to that actually. Even when it came to Envision Fitness, actually, I'm not saying I was doubted, but people were skeptical as it has the potentiality to fail, and it does. Not only does Envision Fitness, but every company internationally. However, again, rewind, this ultimately boils down to choices. And I made that choice outweighing the pros and the cons of it. And it is a risk, but this is where it gets relatable, especially as what you outlined about obviously how your mum viewed obviously you obviously instituting your own landscaping company at the time. But because we live in a world where it's situated to work and you have fixed hours to earn X amount to afford all your necessities amongst miscellaneous. However, there's that's not always the way to live life. I'm not saying by no means is it wrong. It isn't, because obviously by, given, in the rate of inflation, the economic crisis and et cetera, it's viable. But obviously, I think nowadays, like individuals can become too compelled and consumed by fear, which their emotions can conflict their judgment. And what I mean by that is you go with the safe or the comfortable option. And because of that, you know that you are guaranteed, let's say in this example, financial security, which again is deemed as a necessity. However, sometimes in life you have to take risk. And even if you fail, there is a win somewhere. And it's like I said earlier on, it's like to be a strategist, if you can find wins in your losses, that makes you a strategist. And if you take risk, then mentally you are more fortified than the vast majority of individuals. And if you can foresee your potential and what you envision, whatever you aspire to do, then ultimately that is what you should pursue. Like for me, whenever I talk about fitness, like there's like I think about like pouring like some gasoline on a fuel and igniting that fire. That's how I feel. Like I feel like so just energetic and so ready to go. Like right now, I could literally go off my chair and go and do. Like I'm just ready for it. But like just something like that, I'm just so like energetic about it, and that's just what fuels my ambition. And you know, ultimately, I'm just glad that it does. But for me, I had to take risk. Yes, a lot of things didn't work out as I foresaw. However, I still had to take risk. And because of that, otherwise I would have gone down a much deeper and darker path, which I knew I wouldn't have done because of the tolerance that I built over the years. But even so, it's like those risks were worth it. And you have to go through that.
Delving into who you are now, in my opinion, you are the perfect guy for in every situation when it comes to fitness, when it comes to communication, mindset. And it's like if anybody needed advice, I would say you'd be the perfect person to come to because you actually come across clear. You use a great vocabulary, which is understandably understandable. you know, and it's like how can someone use such, I would say, big words, for example, which can be understood by someone like myself who, say, for example, from year three to year six, I wasn't in school. So at the age of 18, I had to teach myself how to read. It's like how can someone like you speak to me with that sort of vocabulary where I actually understand it?
Well, very interesting, but great question. Okay. So when you work in the line of personal training, obviously you're going to be encountering a number of different individuals with a vast array of understanding. So, what I mean by that is how you communicate to individuals, you have to be mindful of how they interpret what you say. So, this leads on to kind of how articulate you could say. I'm more technical, but um, when let's say hypothetically I'm demonstrating and explaining the technical execution of a barbell bench press, hypothetically, not only would I use words to convey it, but I would also use my body language. So something I would do is like if I say, you know, tucking your elbows in, then I would illustrate a visual representation of me how to obviously rotate, well, how to move your elbow to ensure X, Y, Z. So whenever I tell someone to do something, I will always have the why, unless if I know the answer. If I don't, then I will say I do not know because it's not my place to give unsolicited advice, and I'll just be transparent. If I don't know, I don't know. But when it comes to my actual verbal communication, so I always like to use comparisons. So, like, obviously, you might want to say, like, some people might say retract your scapula, but it's like, what does retract mean? What does scapula mean? So, because you're being articulate in that manner, respectfully, there is no need for you to say that because all you're doing to do is let your client misunderstand what you're saying. So the best way of doing it is just move your shoulder blades back. So as you do, your shoulder comes back, but then obviously there should be more or less the muscle fibers in your pectoralis should be stretching as your shoulder blades are near enough connecting with each other, and that is a more simplistic way of going about it, because you ultimately you want to attempt to match their level of understanding, and you want to say it in the most simplistic way possible, because if you if you're too sophisticated about it, they will not understand it, and you're not doing your job. If they're paying you for a service and you're overcomplicating them with all this extensive amounts of knowledge, I mean, fair enough that you know it, but if that's not what the client wants, then don't say it unless if the client asks. But for me, I will always justify like every single entity down to the minute detail. So, like, for instance, it's like, right, going rewinding back to the bench press, it's like, right, why do we tuck our elbows in? Answer is so we don't obviously extensively stretch the muscle fibers in our shoulder. Obviously, as that could be as a result to damage occurring in your rotator cuff. In addition to that, it removes the emphasis from your pectoralis. In addition to that, you're not as much in a stabilized position, because so if we think about like a barbell, for instance, obviously your wrist wants to be neutral, forearms parallel to the ceiling, and obviously elbows directed underneath the bar. If your elbow is out, then that causes it to be in an unnatural position, causing obviously a lack of stabilization, and obviously is prone to injury occurring. So factors like that, if you tell someone to do something, you should be able to say why. And if you cannot, go and research it and come back to them and tell them why. Because if not, don't give the advice. Don't tell someone to do something if you don't know why.
What I've noticed through watching reels on social media on what to do,
Oh,
you know,
we're getting into a good topic now.
indeed, getting deep.
Oh, I like this.
I hate it when people have to go to social media like we had, you know, and it just
Yes.
shows like it goes, you want to grow a big chest, do this, and it doesn't explain the why. Why? How can you say that person should do this when you don't know that person?
Yeah, and that's it. So when it comes to, obviously, we know from experience that it is merely a marketing scheme based on whatever their intentions are, whether it's fame, revenue. There needs to be foundations that have to be incorporated as to why you would use that individual as your source of intel. And like you just said there, like years ago, I actually saved Instagram reels of people doing all these like fancy movements or combo movements and stuff. And it's like, I just came to realization, like, what am I doing? I'm looking like bloody Mickey Mouse or Scooby Doo or something. I'm thinking, what am I doing? And it's like, it doesn't need to be this complicated. But this is when I started to study anatomy, biomechanics, physiology. And it's like, right, I want to know how the human body functions. How do joints function? How do muscles work? How do the fibers grow? What do you need to do to grow muscle? And because you're intertwining anatomy, biomechanics, and physiology together, you therefore get an understanding of how the body works and how that relates to an individual's goal as well. And then that's another reason as to why I can break it down so simply, because not only can I explain the why, but I know because I studied the body, and that's it. So because I know, the joints, the muscles, the functionality of it, the influence it has, that's justifiable. And then that's when individuals come to a realization like, oh yeah, I didn't think of it like that. Oh, I didn't know that. It's like, well, there you go, there you go. Jobs are good, and so, but ultimately, with influencers conveying their knowledge and experience via social media, their source of intel is merely going to be external via other social media influencers. And if you're saying, right, to grow your chest, you need to be doing X, Y, Z. And if there is no Y, where is the trust? Where is the credibility? It's like, why should I trust you? But obviously, people are going to stereotype because they're going to look at that individual and think, right, is he or she in good shape? Are they a personal trainer? Are they not? Bearing in mind a lot of, I would say, you know, being a personal trainer or an online coach is relatively easy nowadays, because especially online, because people don't even have qualifications, they don't have the insurance for liability purposes, and because they think they know it, it's like, do you? And it's especially when it comes to circumstances where, you know, prone to injuries occur, or as like emergency first aid occurrences, like, are you insured for that? If not, then obviously that's something that you should have accepted. If it's especially if it's not in your terms and conditions as well, because then that individual can just merely get sued for it. And it's dangerous because you don't know whether they're qualified. Because when you're on board with an individual online, there's nothing like I don't really often see people go through liability waivers, their qualifications, any form of first aid training, any form of like health and safety procedures in case of X, Y, Z occurring. And there's nothing to do with that. And but if there's no foundations of like trust, credibility, then I wouldn't come to you. Like if you don't explain the why to me, I'm just gonna say it's a load of baloney.
Mm. It's so true. It's like most people won't explain the why.
No.
Explain the what and how, but they don't explain the why. And
Yeah.
it's like I think that's why we are where we are,
Yeah.
and why we will scale where we'll scale because we explain the why.
Yeah.
And the most important part is these people, like myself, are going to social media looking for that help to grow myself and where I want to grow. But how do I know that the way I'm doing it is right or wrong? You know,
And that's it. It's like again, if we refer back to like the barbell bench press, like for me, I would go through like basic anatomy when it comes to like your pectoralis, so like your clavicular head, which is like your upper pec, or you've got like your sternocostal head, which is like your lower pec, and it's like right, how do what so like what position do I need to be in to target? So like normally for your upper pec, it's more like right, inclines on 30, 45 degrees approximately. If you want or but then your arm has to be parallel to your upper pec to bias it, whereas it would be a similar principle to like your lower pec. So really it's like how your arm's positioned dictates what fibers in the pec are stretched. So it's like stuff like that because we like in simplistic terms we've just delved into basic anatomy and basic biomechanics and understanding the relationship between what muscles are in the pec. We've gone through biomechanics, so the functionality of like the elbow and the shoulder joint, how our arm needs to be positioned to therefore bias each part of the pec. And it's like stuff like that. That's going to make an astronomical difference. And quite frankly, to justify it even more, it's like I'd always say to people, if you're doing some form of chest, it's like, right, stick your arms out, about shoulder height. It's like, right, if you move your arms back, I'm like, where do you feel it? They'll say the shoulder. And I'm like, okay, so obviously your shoulder, your fibers in your shoulder are stretching. It's like, right, move your arms down, then pull them back. Where do you feel it? Your chest. So it's like because you're using a mixture of both explanations and demonstrations to merely justify what you're conveying, that therefore conveys that you are a credible source of intel because you can therefore elaborate on the why, which is vastly important because then it again rewind ultimately conveys that you are trustworthy and credible.
I want to dive more back into who you are now and where you want to be in the future. So, from where you are now, 22-year-old entrepreneur, now going online to help hopefully hundreds of thousands of people with their fitness journey. What made you want to go online?
Well, given the events that transpired this year, I was given limited choice, let's say, but I still took those choices into consideration. So, what I mean was obviously, given the predicament with obviously Pure Gym, obviously closing, obviously that imposed momentary setbacks, you could say. So, obviously, I emailed pretty much every single gym around. But obviously, I even went into gyms and inquired about like their rent module, the volume of members, um, X, Y, Z, and ultimately, like either the rent was far too extortionate and far too unrealistic given the volume of members, or they just didn't get back to me, or they got back to me much later than I initially anticipated. And for me, I'm not going to wait around. For me, that was something where I was thinking, you know what? If they don't want me, don't have me. And I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm not going to wait around. I want to do something. So for me, I thought, right, okay, so I'm in a bit of a pickle here. And even though I've contacted gyms and I've obviously got limited choices, it's like, right, what do I want to do that's realistic? I thought back to when I was in college and me wanting to be an entrepreneur and pretty much just operate my own enterprise. And that merely sold it to me. I just thought, you know what? I want to go into business in a different way by obviously being my own boss. And you know what? I want to make my own fitness company and I want to go online just for now. Obviously, I know people know what we envision to do long term. However, again, it boils down to what's realistic and sustainable for us. But I thought, you know what? With the knowledge and the experience that I have learned over the years, I'm too good for them. I don't even mean to sound arrogant for that. Like, my talents are better put to use elsewhere. And if I have the opportunity to make a bigger difference that's within my control, then by any means, I will always take that opportunity. Because if I was to work somewhere else, yes, I would still have that opportunity, but that would impose limitation. I wouldn't be able to do it to the scale as I would imagine to. And because of that, now because it's in my own control, I therefore have the choices in the palm of my hand to think, right, how big can I make Envision Fitness? And not only that, but how big of a difference can I make, or how much we can make?
Do you know what I think? So I'm going to get a bit deeper.
Please.
So if you look at being a personal trainer in a building, you can only reach X amount of clients per week. Yeah. You can only reach one client an hour.
Yeah.
Right. If you go online, you can reach 10 times X more clients an hour. So if you've got two vehicles, one's a 1.4 litre Corsa, that's in the gym. You've got a Ferrari, which is online programs. You put your foot in each car, same amount of energy in both pedals, but one of the pedals that you press is going to go 10 times faster than the 1.4. So what I mean by this is there's people out there like myself who are walking into a gym and they don't know what they're doing. And with my 1 hour of time, each hour, each day, I want to try and reach a far more wide scale to help people have the understanding of what to do when it comes to the gym where they don't feel insecure or self-conscious about walking the gym and not knowing what they're doing. And that's one of the reasons why I went online is because I know if I go through the internet and help people through that instead of doing it face to face, that 1 hour of energy that I've invested into helping one person, I can help 100.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I personally want to go online.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense, especially from a a business perspective. But however, while I am inclined to agree with it, it's a dilemma for me because obviously because I've done face to face personal training more than I have online. Like I'm not saying it's merely personal preference, but for me because I'm very philosophical and based on what I believe, it's like right, it's hard for me to decide whether I choose, like you said about like which vehicle. It's like I would rather come to a compromise and kind of like accommodate both in some way, which is something we're working on at the moment,
Yeah,
actually, as you know,
yeah.
obviously as part of our business model. But for me, it's like, I don't know. I just couldn't live with myself. It like I'm not saying like if I neglected them, but it's like if I got that control or if I've got that ability to help them, then I would, even though but again, that's just my morals taking over. But if we rewind it from a business perspective, 100%, you've got a vast comprehensive array of your demographic. Your turnover rate's going to be more exponential as well. Obviously, you're going to receive a lot of more passive marketing as well. And obviously, it ultimately takes a lot less time. So from both perspectives, like I understand it, but it's it's frustrating because it's like right, it's like you choose business or you choose your morals, but even though you would choose business, but it's like you don't want them to like collide. So it's like right, business comes first over the morals, but it's like for me, it's like I think it just further emphasizes the value that I desire to convey to individuals. So it's like right, this kid's obviously he's running a business and it is about business because we're not turning over revenue. We're not going to operate. We're not going to operate. Then it's all going to go to shambles. But it's like, right, for me, it's like, thankfully, a lot of individuals have always perceived me as, how you perceive me amongst others. But I think it just further justifies the why we're doing what we're doing. And it's like we're conveying value to even one person. And it's like, and not a lot of people would do that. And I think if we can do that, which I know we have been and we will do, it's like, I think it just makes us better than most.
That's why I believe Envision Fitness has that balance.
I agree.
For example, we've got the consultation, which is where we have the one-to-one, where we get to nitty-gritty of who they are and what their goal is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how can we mostly benefit them through the weekly check-ins and each week tweaking their program to make it more tailored to them. It's like we took that hour instead of it being a one-to-one personal training session, we took that hour to sit down and really get to know that individual and then create the program for them,
Yeah.
which we then guide them each week and have every other day check-ins through message.
Yeah.
And it's like with that we've reached more of a scale. We've helped more people, but on the same amount of value.
Yeah. And that's it. It's like we've come to a compromise between morals and business, even though hypothetically you are going to deem business as the priority. However, it's our business and we operate it as we see fit.
Mm.
And because we're coming to that compromise, we're therefore adhering to what our philosophy and what our ethos is and what that encapsulate of conveying value and ensuring it is therefore bespoke to every individual to ensure that we can construct realistic and sustainable life changes as well, whether it's for one individual, 10, 50, 100, it doesn't matter. If we have the opportunity to work with someone that desires our assistance to enhance their perception or their well-being, we are doing what we are doing within our enterprise.
I'm looking forward for people to actually see the value of what Envision Fitness can do. And even though like even now behind the scenes we've got individuals already in programs which we've not posted or spoke about since now,
No?
we're building that portfolio of what value we actually bring to the table
Yeah,
and what makes us different from all the other companies out there.
absolutely. Like, bearing in mind, we've already received testimonials. However, not only have we got obviously X amount of clients onboarding with us at Envision Fitness, however, obviously, as you know, and obviously based on where we are right now, we're working with local enterprises to pretty much enhance their perception and their well-being, whether it's physical or mental, as an opportunity for us to again just adhere to what our ethos and our philosophy encapsulates. And obviously, if we can receive those testimonials to justify the value that we can convey, that's pretty much us saying the why.
Mm.
Again, rewind it back. If you hear it from the people, say less.
Yeah.
We can talk about it all day long, but it's coming from us. Of course, we're going to be like that. It's our business. Of course, we're going to need to do that because, ultimately we need to turn over in revenue and X, Y, Z. But
We believe.
yeah, yeah, we have to be optimistic. And obviously, if the people speak, people will follow, and that's what happens. People follow when progress is recognized.
Word of mouth is one of the best ways to make a business,
Yeah,
you
passive
know,
marketing.
because people can pay to have fake reviews
Yeah,
in different ways, and it's like when you've got an individual who truly believes in your service and says to someone who they trust, I've done XYZ with my fitness career, fitness fitness journey. Sorry, this company helped me. Vision Fitness was the company that got me to where I was then to where I am now. I believe in them, and it already sells it.
and ultimately, like, I actually genuinely forgot to mention to you earlier on, but people were genuinely looking forward to our podcast as well, watching it and stuff like that. So I was like passively marketing it. So, well, as you said about word of mouth, I was thinking, yeah, that's relatable. That's relatable. But yeah, people are genuinely looking forward to seeing how we progress and just what we have in store for them. And again what we envision long term, which ultimately that what people want. And this is something, as you know, which we've been grafting conscientiously for ever since, obviously Envision Fitness was founded.
Where do you see Envision Fitness in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Realistically, the ultimate goal I have in mind for Envision Fitness is merely operating a commercial property of our own, whether it's in Grimsby, whether it's elsewhere. But ultimately, I would say Grimsby, just because of obviously Pure Gym closing down and how it has merely hindered or compromised the mental slash physical well-beings of thousands of individuals. And because a lot of individuals don't feel comfortable approaching or using a gym, that's a factor as to why we're here right now, because we want, so when they walk into a gym and they don't know what they're doing, we provide that how and the why for when they walk in. So when they walk into our gym, it's like, right, we have the tools and the resources at your disposal to give you the how, the why, and it's right in front of you just before a blink of an eye. And if we can facilitate that to accommodate our members, we're going above and beyond as a lot of other gyms aren't doing.
I just want to dive in a bit more about when we actually worked at Pure. You know,
By all means.
that gym was different gravy.
Yeah, it was.
It was a completely different atmosphere compared to any other gym that I've ever been to
It was.
around the UK. And it was like, it gave that support of family,
It did.
and it was like, I feel like it come down to the team as much as the gym. The team was so solid.
Something, so when I worked with my former line manager, something that he once told me was what it takes to make a gym. And he said something along the lines of, it doesn't matter about the equipment, the classes, etc., that is in your gym. What makes the foundation of a gym is your team. And I agree. Your team is a foundation of what ultimately makes a gym. And to have a like minded individual like yourself be near enough my equal in Envision Fitness, I couldn't have asked for anything better, because your sheer desire and focus is exactly what Envision Fitness needs. And like you said about Pure Gym encapsulating that family vibe, it was a second home to me. And the amount of people and friends that I would even consider, family in some regards is, astronomical. And it's like a lot of people have really made a difference to my life, and especially as they've seen me grow up. People have seen me how I was back then, even at Pure Gym, and to how I am now. And you know they see how it makes them feel and how it makes me feel. But if we can provide similar ethos or a philosophy to Envision Fitness when we ultimately operate our own commercial property, then I think we are again just going above and beyond, and we are doing what we can based on what we believe.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we are doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it is.
It's like we want to bring that back to our town because it's been taken away.
It has.
Thousands of people have just been cast aside to then just go join a different gym, but they didn't take into account that those individuals may not have the mental resources to do that.
No,
Because they got so comfortable at Pure Gym because it was a beautiful gym.
it was.
It had two separate areas. And it was great.
Yeah.
And it was big enough to just have everything you needed. And like I said, then about the team, about us guys, literally each day being the way we are, that electric,
It was electrifying.
yeah, having that electric personality where people walked in, and how many people come up to us and spoke about very in depth things about their lives to us.
Yeah, people open up.
It wasn't even a job.
No, it
You know,
wasn't.
I used to go there every day and think I'm buzzing.
Yeah,
Like the time used to fly because all I do is just chat
yeah, yeah,
about the
yeah.
most. But
I
like,
still, I still, I still recall. I still.
isn't it?
I do love when people watch you grow up or they see like the position you're in, and it's nice because obviously, like I still remember like, like the sheer energy that I conveyed, and people would always say, "Damn, Kane, you're walking as if you're on a mission." I'm like, "Aren't I always? I always am." Because I'm just on it. Like I'm just too focused on what I enjoy, and like I said, pure gym. I loved it. I loved it,
Mm.
and there was, and it's just a shame that everything transpired the way it did, but you know, but now in life you have to accept how things are, and I think sometimes the biggest lesson in life is letting go of what we fear to lose and how we choose to move forward from that. And now I have a chance to change things and be better, not just for myself, but to other people.
I remember the first time, I think it was 2021, when I first walked into that gym and I saw you, and
Oh god, here we go.
I was like, I didn't work there at the time. I was working nights on a shutdown on a refinery. But I can remember when I first walked up to you, and I was like, "Hi, I'm Andy," and you was like, "I'm Kane." And as soon as you shook my hand, as soon as you shook my hand, that electric just absolutely went straight through me. I never felt that before, and it was like, it's hard to explain how it was, but it was like, I shook your hand and it was like, we both like just instantly, I was like connected with like pure energy. And it was like
Oh, I love that.
nothing I've ever felt,
Yeah.
and I've just done a full 12-hour shift. I was knackered, but as soon as you shook your hand, you woke me up. You woke me up.
It's
And no
like
one's ever done that
it's
before.
like you've had a dosage of like dopamine or
By a
oh,
handshake.
yeah,
By a handshake.
mate.
You know.
Mate, sometimes I've had it before where my energy can sometimes be a bit too contagious.
But I feel like there was like some days where, as well as other people would probably feel it as well, where you just don't want to do what you want to do when you get there. You just, "Oh, I can't. You've got there, but you just, I can't bother to just push myself,
Yeah,
And it's when you meet an individual who works for a company and they've got that sheer electric passion in the job, it lifts you up, and it lifted me up at times when I was just so down, especially with like what was going on with my ex girlfriend and leaving her and literally like being where I was working nights, low on vitamin D. Like my I was probably say I was like most down in my life. One of the times was then, and it's like when I was coming to that gym and I saw you specifically, and I was like, "Are you Kane? Good morning," or whatever it was, and then you shook my hand. That gave me that energy that I needed to just carry on.
yeah,
And sometimes I felt the same vice versa. Like some days you just couldn't be bothered, but I was like, "Come on, Kane, get on it, mate,
yeah,
bam!"
yeah.
And you was like, "Yeah,
Uh, as the vast majority of individuals know me, I always endeavor to be, me, bubbly, energetic, outgoing, or enthusiastic. And obviously, as you mentioned previously, there are going to be occasions where you're not going to be feeling quite yourself. And, it's why it's fundamental to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who are there to uplift you spiritually. And for me, I'm grateful for it because I've always struggled in my life in the sense of being uplifted spiritually because I've not had many people there for me. But again, given the line of events that have transpired, this ultimately conveyed that people were there for me, and that's a debt that you know I'd love to repay. And again, it just further emphasizes otherwise as well. And it's like for me, I've come to that realization now that I'm not alone, and there are people you know, who are actually genuine and don't perceive me any different in spite of obviously circumstances as well. So
I'll say Kane because the person you are, people judge people from who they are, and from knowing you now from 2021, I knew from the first time I met you we was going to work together. I just knew it, just because that's who I am as a
yeah,
person. I can't help it. Like I use past experience to be able to then judgment for future gain. And as soon as I met you, I thought that kid, he's just got something different about him. And I saw myself when I looked at you in energy wise, and I thought, I need that with me.
yeah,
And two people who have that energy is dangerous.
It is a
So
dangerous game.
dangerous,
It is.
you know.
I thought one person was bad enough, but having two, different ball game. That man, different ball game. But I still remember when I was at home and I was working on the initial business plan for Envision Fitness, and I was contemplating like I knew that this can be operated as a sole trader, and I was contemplating who who could I deem as a worthy recipient to be my business partner or my equal as director of Envision Fitness. I thought, you know what, Andy Gallagher. Andy Gallagher. I was like, that bloke. I was like, I need him. So when you were in France, obviously, I think I recall like dropping you a line like, "Hey mate," and asking how you were. And it's like we need to catch up and stuff. And I was thinking, right, I'm going to propose my business plan. And I was thinking, when you were on board with it, I was thinking, I've got him, I've got him. And I just thought, that decision was just validated because as you reiterated previously about our energies being that contagious, quite frankly, I contemplated the same. I was thinking, your energy is contagious and it's unmatched. Like nothing I have ever seen from any other individual I have ever encountered in my life. Like, and ultimately, that how you convey yourself, like in context of your energy levels, that is what Envision Fitness needs to thrive.
I think the exact same. Like, I left Pure in March because of the closure
Yeah.
of the building, but I already had the wind turbines booked in March because I always knew that I was going to be leaving the turbines to do, sorry, leaving the gym to do the turbines. But I always knew that I was going to have a fitness company. But like you said a minute ago, I also thought to myself, I physically can't do this as a sole trader.
Yeah.
I physically can't. And that's why I thought, who could I go in partnership with? And I already thought of you. So by the time you're creating the Envision Fitness business plan, I'm working away in France, absolutely killing it, thinking, right, get this revenue in, get the experience in, get the what I need to have, just in case I need to go back next year, which I don't want to do if I don't have to. I want to be Envision Fitness all the way. But if I have to, I will do that
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I want this business to thrive to the highest it can go, just because of who we are and the sheer amount of value we give to people, or we are going to give to people, it deserves to be there.
Yeah. And it does.
You know,
And, you know, I can envision the scale Envision Fitness can go if the work ethic that we have stays as it is and we just be who we are and we improve day by day and we learn from our mistakes and ultimately become the best possible version of ourselves and to represent this company being Envision Fitness.
I know it will, just because of who we are.
Yeah.
And it's like we show up each day, each week. We go to the gym. We look after ourselves, hygiene wise, because we've learned from the past
Yeah, yeah,
to now
absolutely.
take control of who we are now. And no matter what happens, even when bad times come, we learn from them and we always get over them and grow. And
Yeah.
that's why I know we will grow because I believe that you are the type of person that no matter what happens, you'll always see sense and you don't let anything bad take away this. Like you don't do drugs, you don't drink, you don't women don't stop you. It's like all these side things that stop men from becoming the best version of them. It overtakes them because of addictions to different sort of things.
Yeah.
And we just don't give into that.
Yeah, and as you know, it's like obviously, my dad used to be an alcoholic. Obviously, my parents have always had a divisive relationship, which therefore hindered our childhood slash our upbringing. Hence why, when it comes to whether it's like going on holiday, driving lessons, my confidence levels, that is going to be a factor. It's like even like when I'm communicating to like women and stuff like that, it's like I've been rejected on a number of occasions, but nowadays it's more I'm just too sorely focused on myself nowadays, and especially with like pure gym as well, with like you know, the closure and being dismissed and amongst miscellaneous as well. So all these events that have transpired has inevitably resulted in the character I'm conveying today, and every choice that I've made has led to this unprecedented moment.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Like that is literally like the bang on. That's the same for me. Likewise,
Yeah,
you know, it's like I can't allow addictions to stop me from reaching the peaks that I can reach because I've seen what addictions can do,
yeah,
as you have.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I've seen, well, as you know, we've both seen the worst possible sides of it.
yeah. When it comes to say alcohol and drug abuse, you know, and it's like they're both just as bad as each other because they both don't only destroy the person that's doing the addiction, it's the people around them. But what I can say is I wouldn't change it.
No,
I wouldn't change it.
no. It's intriguing that you put it in that perspective, because it's like, what if that didn't happen? How would how would you be living life, and what would be different? And I think if what happened didn't happen, I mean, more in context of my dad being a former alcoholic, I would say that I would still be who I was 6 years ago, to some extent. Um, but because obviously, if I didn't go to the gym, then that would be a more of a evident factor to consider that I'd still be myself as well. So yeah, it's an interesting dilemma when you put it like that.
When before when you said that you went to the gym with your dad when you were 16, do you reckon you would still be who you are now if your dad wasn't there? Do you reckon you still would have gone to the gym?
It's difficult to say. I mean, if I put my shoes in my 16-year-old mind, I would say no, because I didn't have that guide. I didn't have that figure to look up to. And, I know it might sound, cliche saying this, but my dad has always been my inspiration. I have always looked up to my dad, and he, you know, you know, we both know, well, as in like my dad and I, like, he is by no means the perfect father, but what makes me admire him a lot is that he is accountable for his actions, and he accepts what happened, and he knows the consequences it had to people around him. And the fact that he's not dwelled on it, and the fact that he made a choice to change to be the man who he is today, and I'm proud of him, honestly. And I love him so much, and I'm just glad that he's still here, because he wouldn't be here otherwise.
Mm.
And you know, for him to be in the predicament he is, you know, it's genuinely mind-boggling, because all the conflictions, all the voices, and all the just everything. Like, he had to combat everything, and for him to come out on top and be in the predicament he is like, and for him just to kind of change and be there for us and watch us grow up, is like, that is a father. That is a father to really, you know, admit you made a mistake, you apologized for it, you changed, you didn't do it again. Now that is a figure you want to look up to. Someone who is accountable for their actions.
Honestly, I actually really do like your dad. I think he's a great man. Um, he has good morals,
He,
especially now.
oh,
You know, he's there for you guys, and it's crazy actually because the way my experience was with my dad was completely opposite. Like, I physically couldn't look up to my dad because he was a heroin addict.
yeah, of course.
You know, and at that time when he was in that position, I the only time we ever did speak was is if he needed like specific things like money, you know, or the only time we did speak, I couldn't really speak to him because he was so not on this earth. He was a different person then,
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
because of the drugs. And what really shifted me personally through my own fitness story was basically like just got out of a relationship because it was toxic, and I was very, very overweight, and I wasn't happy the way I looked and felt. So I remember when I went to Pure Gym that first time, 2021, and I was upstairs and I was skipping because previously I went to boxing and I physically couldn't do it because I was so overweight.
Yeah.
I wasn't fit enough, and I was either gonna be sick, faint, or literally like diarrhea everywhere, because I physically couldn't do it. And there was
Yeah.
like 5 times when I had to leave the boxing gym because I couldn't do it. And with that boxing gym I went to, which I actually look back now and I think I respect what he did. So whenever I walked out, the people in there would have to do more because of the fact of the punishment is not only on you, it's the people around you. And that taught me a lot. At the time I didn't get it. But then so I spent a year in Pure Gym skipping, doing my press ups, doing my sit ups. But the first day I went and I was doing my sit ups, I physically felt so embarrassed to do sit ups in front of people because I felt like women and men were judging me, especially women thinking, oh, look at your rolls. They're not going to fancy you. But I remember I looked at myself in that mirror. I said to myself, I went, they don't fancy you anyway, bro. I was like, unless you do these sit ups, you're never going to change ever. So get them done. And I don't think I've ever done sit ups that viciously since then,
Me and core training, never heard of
you know.
it. Unless you're talking about like core strength from your squats and your bench and your deadlifts, but that's different from.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. We've got such different exercise routines. We've got different goals. And at
Yeah.
that time, it was just, I just wanted to lose weight. I wanted to become fitter. I wanted to become happier because I wasn't happy. I was so trapped in myself. I was so trapped in my ex relationship. I was so trapped in my family. The only option I had was either work on myself or the other side, which is the darker side. But that never really took over me because whenever I did think that way, I always used to say to myself, which I'm happy that I do have this in the back of my mind to tell it to, like, I hope most people do. When you do feel like you're in such a dark place and you think it'd be such easier just to end it like that. I said to myself, the fact I'm thinking in my own subconscious mind that I want to end it like that, when I've got a long life ahead of me, it shows that the only person that can change that is myself. And that's with effort,
Yeah.
strategic planning and effort, you know. And that's what I did. And the first thing I did was I removed everything that was toxic in my life. And it made things a lot harder because removing them people made the bills a lot more higher.
Yeah.
But I had to do what I had to do to be happy,
Yeah.
And it was like I had to have short time discomfort for long time gain because I knew that I'm not happy now. So if I do make it a bit worse, that's fine because I know that when I get through these hard times, I'm going to be better.
Mm.
I am better. I'm in the best physical health I've ever been. And when I say that, I'm not shredded. But last year when I was at boxing, I was shredded, but I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Now I feel good. I'm financially in the best position I've ever been in. I've got the right people around me. I've got you, got my brother James. I've got family members around me that actually love me. Got nieces, got sister. I've got sisters and brothers that actually
Yeah.
physically love me. My dad's now off heroin. He's working on himself. My mum's trying her best to do what she can do. And they've all got still to go.
Yeah.
You know,
You got the
and I'm,
Gallagher bloodline.
I'm still trying it. I'm still trying to help them. Because obviously they do still need help, and that's another motivational thing that gets me to have the motivation is thinking of them when I need to take control of my own life. Because now I have time to help other people.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you need to do is sort yourself out first. Be selfish, sort yourself, and then think about others.
I can relate a lot to that. And, for you to be in such a, troublesome predicament and you made the choices that you made and you made the investment that you made, ultimately just suggest otherwise the individual that you are. And something that I learned, especially as you just said there, is like, people would say other people can change you. And it's like, not always. And it's like, only you can change yourself. And it's like, even in spite of like everything that you've gone through, it's like, again, something else that I've learned is like battles leave scars, and that's something you can't see.
Mm.
And when you said about like your dad and stuff like that, it's like with my dad, it's more like, I remember having to give him money to buy Smirnoff vodka. Obviously carrying him to like the sofa to look after him and make sure he was like hydrated and everything like that. Sometimes I'd have to go and like actually measure his like alcohol and stuff like that. Sometimes I'd have to get my mum to come over as well because he might have like vomited on the floor or the toilet or whatever. And just obviously just enduring the verbal abuse as well, obviously, which obviously takes a toll. But ultimately, you construct a tolerance over time, obviously, because obviously you're situated in that environment, so you don't have much choice. And obviously, even though people have choices, but it's like for me, I couldn't just like walk out or go anywhere because it's like obviously I've got my driving test soon, and obviously I didn't drive back then. It's like I had no one, so it's like right, I can't flee. All I could do was like it's like something you said to me once about fighting. It's like right, if you're in the ring, you know, get in the ring on that last round and finish it. And for me, like again, slightly different dilemma between you and your dad. It's like me and my dad. It's like for me, like even though technically it would be justifiable for me to say I hate my dad, I'll never forgive him, blah 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 blah. But that's not me. And because I knew my dad could change, that's why I stuck with him because I knew deep down that he could change, and I think like when you talk like bit off topic, well, ish, but I think when you talk about love, like it's difficult to explain what love is, but it's a feeling. And I think like when you feel love, it's just such a different thing. It's like that was such a compelling feeling that took over everything. And it's like it just took over everything. I just ultimately knew my dad could change, and that's why I just stood with him. And I think I'm not saying if it wasn't for me, but I think if I didn't do what I didn't do, I think he would have been dead.
Mm.
And because obviously he had to get hospitalized on occasion as well, just for excessive alcohol consumption. He attempted rehabilitation, which obviously didn't work according to plan as well. And um, he was just surrounded by people in his life that he didn't need to be surrounded by. So, like you said about removing that toxic energy or individuals out of your life, my dad merely had to do the same for him because, you know, that was a factor. The toxicity was merely a factor that contributed to him, um, being an alcoholic as well. And like you said about like, you could have gone down a darker path, even though he did, but you didn't. And it's like, it just comes to show that even who you surround yourself with can manipulate you into making irrational decisions, which could be detrimental to your mind, your health, amongst miscellaneous too. So it's like, I think because of who I am and the energy that I convey, and because I deem myself as an optimist. Like I like I always hope for the best, and I always like to see the best in people, even people who you know I might not be too overly fond of, or people that have taken advantage of me or have done things which technically could be deemed as unforgivable. But even in spite of that, I don't hold grudges. It's just genuinely a shame because a lot of people just amount to so much more and so much better. And it's like if I could see that potential and that opportunity in you, I'm not saying why can't you, but it's like this is what you could have been. It's like some people are here, some people are here, some people are here. It doesn't matter, but it's like again, rewind. It ultimately boils down to choices.
Mm.
And when you said about having to be selfish, um, that's something that I've always struggled with, being selfish, because obviously, as I mentioned, like previously, it's like I'm too compassionate and I'm too selfless, and you know, ultimately, I place emphasis on other people on occasion more than I do, but it's kind of going through that transition of character development of, right, how do I be selfish, but how do I balance that between being me? And it's work in progress, and no one's ever a finished product. I'm merely a byproduct or a work in progress. And, you know, because, like, again, referring to you same way you said, you have to go through to have peace, you have to have chaos. It's like that that's the message. And it's like letting go of things that you held to dearly, and to pretty much work on who you're destined to be as well. So all of it, it's like everything that's transpired for the both of us, in my humble opinion, was just merely just meant to be.
Mm. I completely agree. I think like going back to a time where, say, when I was growing up, it was like there was times in my life when my dad would sell all of our furniture, all of our possessions to facilitate his addiction. So there's points where we was literally sleeping on like moldy clothes, you know. And it was like it got to a point where I was at this point in my life I was living in a homeless shelter because I chose to become homeless to gain a better life because of the past life I had. It wasn't there was no growth. There was only downwards. It was either prison or dead, you know. And it was like what I had to then make a moral decision to myself, and the choice I had to make to myself was become homeless and start again, you know. And at this point, I was living in a homeless shelter, and I went to go and see my dad when he was at his worst, and he was anorexic. His hair was very long, greasy. He stunk, you know, and he wasn't him who I remembered. And I remember I walked into his flat, and it reminded me of the times when I used to live like this, where it was just a mattress on the floor, a TV, and some mouldy clothes in the corner, and just fag ash everywhere, uh, cans with ash inside of them. Joe, where it's like an
Yeah,
ashtray.
yeah.
And I remember I was sat on his couch, and two things were going through my mind. The first thing was, I hope I don't get pricked by a needle. That was the first thing I thought because that's my life ended there and then. Um, and the second thing I was thinking of was he was talking to me, and because he's so off his face on these drugs, and it wasn't just heroin, it was Valium, um, multiple different pills as well as heroin. And I sat there and I remember he was talking to me, and the way he was talking was so mumbled, like,
Sounds like my old man when he used to
yeah.
drink.
And that's how he used to talk to me. And I remember I looked at him and I went, you know what, Dad? I went, this is going to be the last time where we ever speak. Unless you fix your life, I went, it breaks my heart that I have to leave you because every time I come here, it ruins me.
Yeah.
And it's like when I said earlier, you've got to be selfish to move forward. I didn't talk to him for 4 years after that point because I knew from then he would either die or become better. And thankfully, he become better. But it took him time and time again to fall to become where he is now, where he's not on any drugs now, which is the best thing ever. And I am close to him again now. And it's like you said earlier, he went, even people you're not fond of, you don't think bad of because it's, in my opinion, it's a waste of energy.
It is.
You know, and
It
it's
is.
like enemies or friends, always give them the best because at the end of the day, giving them that negative energy, it's a waste of energy when you can invest that into becoming better than yourself and helping other people.
Well, if you break it down into maths, given if my maths knowledge is still intact, but like a positive and a negative can be a positive,
Mm.
but then that energy merely just fuels you. You know, let the doubters doubt, let the people hate. It is what it is. You know, if they want to convey their character in in the mannerisms they so desire, let them, because that ultimately conveys their character and how people therefore perceive them. And it's like when you said earlier on about like you made a choice of removing the individuals or the toxicity from your life. It's like you made that choice, but it's like for me, it was like it was removed, but it was removed for me, not from me doing it. And reflecting on again all the line line of events that have transpired, it's like it has gone. It's like I'm free, and that's how I feel. I feel free. I don't feel entrapped. I don't feel the need to not be transparent or not be open. I feel like I can, that I don't have that control over me anymore. And it's like, my destiny could be fulfilled by any means necessary now. It's like, because I know what I want, there's nothing stopping me. And no one will stop me with what we are going to do. And as we've said this before, the only person or the only people that can stop us is us and no one else.
Thank you, Caine. Is there anything else you want to talk about today? Because I think that was brilliant.
Mate, I think we've covered the jackpot on everything, quite frankly.
Well, thank you guys for watching episode 1 of Mindful Movement with Envision Fitness, Andy and Caine.
Thank you very much, everyone. It has been a pleasure, Andy.
Likewise, Caine, that was so in depth, and I think honestly our past experience and experience now on our stories will hopefully help a lot of people out there, and I hope you guys like it. If you do, please get in touch, like, share, comment,
Yeah.
and
Just let us know if
yeah,
there's any propositions you have in mind for what podcast that Andy and I should do, or if there's anyone that you would like us to invite, then obviously, as Andy's just said, feel free to either like, follow, comment, or just simply message us, giving us your idea, and we'll bear that in mind so we can incorporate it and make it come to life.
thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.